Good morning, Young Kings. Time for your morning motivation. Happy New Year's Eve. So, if you've been traveling with me this year, you know it's been an up and down year. A lot of different things has happened. And so, if you're still traveling, and I know that I don't operate my life inside a vacuum. So, if I've been going through stuff, then I know that other people as well is going through things as well. So, if you made it this far to the end of this year, December 31st, 2020. Just give yourself a pat on the back. We still standing. A lot of stuff was meant that came against us that should have probably took us out, knocked us down. And it may have knocked us down, but it didn't kill us. So the fact that we are still standing is something that should be applauded. So give yourself a hand. And I had to remind myself a few times this year just how proud I was of myself. Some things that I went through this year, I won't recap on them. You can go back and see some of the videos. But I have to tell myself, and sometimes you got to encourage yourself to keep going on, because when you start depending on other people to give you a compliment, and you start wondering if you got a cheering squad or somebody that's in your corner, a support system, when you need people the most, they'll be there for you the least. So you can't be codependent. I know there's an element of my personality that had a codependency on external factors. So things I learned this year is definitely something that I'm going to have to reinforce my foundation to be more solid with who I am and being okay. And sometimes being okay, not being okay. Don't think like everything's supposed to be fine all the time. You know, sometimes the rain helps you appreciate the sunny days, and sometimes the snow, the winter, help you appreciate the spring. And I was just telling my daughter the other day, it was cold outside, and it was like one day it was like 50 degrees and it was cold. And I said, that 50 degrees seems cold because you're just coming from, you know, temperatures that are 80 and 90 degrees. But after the winter time, that 50 degrees is going to feel like a summer day. Like after you get used to the winter, below zero, 15 below, 20 below, 30 below, and then it gets back up to zero, and you get to in the springtime. Now that same 50 degrees that people will put coat on coming out of the winter, there's going to be people with their tops down and the windows down because they had came out of a cold environment. So it's all about perspective. And a lot of times in life, we look at things as just black and white. But sometimes if you change your perspective, you can change your position in life. And that's one of the definite things that I'm going to go in and try to do in 2021. So we're going to continue on with this boundaries. I just got back from the gym, ran 4 miles, my last 4 miles of 2020. And it felt pretty good. I mean, it's on a treadmill, so I don't like running on a treadmill, but it beats not running at all. So I was going to try to go outside and run, but it just came down with snowing and there's ice on the road. And the way 2020 has been, I probably would have slipped and fell and then really had, a rough time navigating to the first part of the year. And I got too much stuff on my plate. So we're going to go through some things on boundaries again, because I do kind of want to wrap this up as we go into the new year. And then I'll kind of introduce what I'm going to do next for my next topic. But I want to start off with a scripture on here, and it's Romans 5. And we'll just go through a few things because 2020 for a lot of people has been extremely challenging. And if you look at it from a perspective, as we just talked about perspective, that things didn't go right, and that woe is you, or that, you're a victim, then it can be very discouraging. But if you look at it from a God perspective, and that's saying that I have, and that's the thing, I'm going to take a detour here. I do these videos just to be transparent, and I'm going to address probably that either in this video or in the next video. But after I stop this recording, I still got to live life. I mean, like, I got to go through and applying these things. Like, I'm learning at the same time that I'm trying to share. So it's not that I've already mastered these skills already. I'm kind of building it up, and I'm inviting you into my space so we can kind of grow together. So a lot of people, or some people, will try to take information and they will pervert it and manipulate it well, you said this in your videos, this and that. And the things I say in my videos, I don't lie. I tell it to you from my perspective of how I experienced it and what I was feeling, and being transparent. But as my daughter said, I'm going to practice transparency with mindfulness. But I say that to get this. It's like this thing called life is not a sprint. It's a marathon. And those people, and this is not to the people who's have this judgment on me, or, want to have something discouraging to say about the content of my videos. What I will say to you is stop watching, or at least subscribe and, enjoy the show front row. But to you young kings, it's like, never let anybody make an indictment on where you are. The best place to start towards a better life, the best place to start to making change and growing, the best place to be and to start a new version of you, becoming a better version of you, establish your boundary. The best place to start is where you are. Not where you want to be, where people expect you to be, or where you think you should be, or where your education says you should be. The best place to start is right there where you are. Today, how are you feeling today is where you should start. And you won't be perfect executing all these things. But at the same time, give yourself grace. And don't let other people have indictments against you that would cause you to be stagnant, or for you to give up, or for you to start moving in a different direction. Be mindful that this is your life. Like, this is my life. Like, and we're going to go through some of these things. It's going to come out in some of our boundaries things, but live your life. And so this is a opportunity for us to travel this road and for us to grow. And there will be people along the way that will walk away from you. And there will be people along the road that will criticize you. There'll be people along the way that, won't approve of your methods or the pace in which you're going. Just think about it. And this just popped in my head. It's like, I think Michael Jordan was the greatest player, basketball player ever. But you can say LeBron James or whatever. But when LeBron James go to play, whether it be another team, he's on the Lakers now, so Lakers play the Celtics, or they're playing Golden State, or whoever will be. Although LeBron James, or you can say Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, whoever your favorite athlete or favorite person is, when they go to another auditorium or another gymnasium and they're playing a away game, or even when they're playing a home game, there's people coming in the crowd that's going to boo them. That no matter what they do, they can did a nice dunk or hit a 3-pointer, whatever it may be. There's people in the audience that are booing. And you can't be moved by that, because there will be people that will boo no matter what you do. Now, the other day he shot an air ball on the free throw line, and it'd be amazed, like, people will get in there and they'll start criticizing him. Oh, did you see that air ball he shot? And they focus on that one time he was at the free throw and he shot an air ball. And this was just recent, probably last week or a week before, he shot an air ball at the free throw. And there'll be people there, and they're like, oh man, look at him, he shot an air ball at the free throw. The people that are making this indictment and his judgments and his criticism of him have not done anything near comparison to what he has accomplished over the course of his career. I'm not just saying basketball or sports should be held in high esteem, but there will be people that's outside of your profession that's watching you that will still criticize you off of every mistake. No matter what he did the rest of that game, people will go back and talk about that free throw and say that he airballed it. And they would say, hey, he's nasty, this and that, he's not this, he's not that. It's a great example with the Michael Jordan and the LeBron James. They keep comparing those two together. And I kind of did it in this video. But the greatness of one doesn't diminish the greatness of another. Like, that's only small mind thinking that thinks in order for you to be great, in order for me to be great, I got to bring you down. Like, in order for you to be great, like there's room for greatness for multiple people to be great. You don't need to step on people in order for you to be great. So just be mindful of that. People will try to bring you down. Hey, so let's get into this because I know Cam is going to shoot me a text and say, hey, that's another 10-minute intro. Hey, roll with me, Cam. We're going to go with this. So let's go to Romans 5. So in the title of this, it says, faith triumphs in trouble. And like I said, in 2020, there's been people in trouble. I know I've experienced some trouble. And then it says, therefore, having been justified by faith, we have the peace with God. Like, if you're going to have peace, it may as well be with the Most High, because anybody lower than that is not significant. And it says, our Lord, Yeshua the Christ, through whom we also have obtained an introduction to faith into this grace for which we stand. So it's like, would you get that peace with God? And, we are created in God's image. And I think a lot of our trouble, and a lot of my trouble, and I'm going to own that, is not having a true identity of who I am and whose I am. Like I lost my identity. I started seeing my life through my mistakes and what other people were telling me I am. So it's like, once you grab that peace that God created you in his image, that you do have royalty flowing through your blood, that you are greater than your circumstances and situation, that you are bigger than your current situation. I used to say that if your problem is bigger than your God, you got a problem. But if your God is bigger than your problem, there's no problem. So it all depends on your perspective. If your problem is larger than your God, then yes, you got a big problem. But if your God is larger than your problem, then you got to trust God that everything is going to be okay. And sometimes I confuse myself through the reality of what I see. And I start to convince myself like I'm in more trouble than what I'm in. But God is in control. God is controlling everything. And it's just like, if you have that peace, then you got to have faith. So we're going to continue on. So that allows you to stand. And we exalt in hope of the glory of God. And not only this, but we also have exalt in our tribulation. So it's like, he's saying it's like we exalt in the hope of God. But not only that, it's not, God is just not there for the sunshine, but he's there for the tribulation. You ought to exalt in tribulation. Like this year, 2020, ought to have showed you some things that you could not have gotten out of a sunny day. Like you needed this year to really realize where you stood in some people's lives and where what people really thought of you. Like when you're really down, that's when you really realize who's on your team and who's not on your team. My little brother Marlon used to have a quote that says, it's lonely at the bottom and it's phony at the top. So when you make it, the people who are around you, they're not thorough. They're not there. They're just there for benefits. But when you're down, you'll figure ain't nobody there. So it says exalt in tribulation. So this is what I wanted to get to. Knowing that tribulation brings about perseverance. So the fact that you went through it ought to give you confidence and give you ability to persevere. So when something else happened, you can say, well, I made it through 2020. I know I can make it through whatever this is going to happen. Or I made it through this situation. So it gives you that perseverance. And then perseverance, proven character, and proven character and hope. And hope does not disappoint because the God of love has been poured out within our hearts through the Holy Spirit who he has given to us. So it's like God is building something. He gives you this tribulation. And then in that tribulation, if you keep standing, then he's going to give you that perseverance. So he's stacking, he's building a foundation. So you went through the trouble, you done persevered, and now after you persevere, he's going to give you that proven character, and then that proven character is going to develop hope. And then after the hope, God said, hey, he's not going to disappoint. So look at your perspective this year. And as I was going through that, I was just like, wow, that's kind of sums it up in this year of things that we can benefit, like things that we can grow. So when I'm on these videos, I'm going to go through some of these things. And it's been a few days. I was meaning to get on earlier, but I've been having to actually live these things. Like there's been boundaries that's been tested with me, and I'm still in the infancy stages of this. So when I was going through unhealthy boundaries, some of these things hit me pretty hard because there's still things that I'm growing in and I'm learning. And we're going to continue to do that. Like this series has been about Dennis Rodman being able to rebound. And this is going to be the conclusion of that. I'm going to leave this in 2020. and I'm going to transition into a new series, and I'll get on that in a bit. But it doesn't always work out in your favor, although in a short term, but in the long term, things does turn around. Like all things will work together for them that love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. So it's like, even though it's not working right now, there was a quote I said before in the earlier video that I heard on the radio, and it says, all things work out in the end. And if they're currently not working out, that means it's not the end. So don't put a explanation point or a period where it's just supposed to be a comma. Like, this trouble we're going through is supposed to be a comma. It's a slight pause, but then you got to continue on the sentence. Like the sentence comprised of the subject and the predicate. So there's a comma after the subject happened, and there's a comma there. You do a pause, and then you continue on to the predicate. So that's an English lesson. I struggled in English, but I still remember that. So the next thing, we're coming up on 16 minutes. 23 signs of unhealthy boundaries. And as I go through these 23 things, there's some things that I realize that I have had unhealthy boundaries. And you may go through them, and some of them may resonate more than others. So you do it through the lens of what you've been dealing with in life. And I'll take a time and I may pause on some of them because those are things that are I'm dealing with in life. So 23 signs of unhealthy boundaries. If you haven't realized the boundaries, you got to go back and watch those other videos on as we establish boundaries. I will say this: boundaries are what you establish when you're in relationship with others. It's how you protect your space, your peace. Like, this is your peace protection. This is your force field around your energy. This is how you protect your energy. It's kind of like your superpowers, your boundaries. Like, you don't let people into your force field. And you got to be able to set those terms. So 23 signs of unhealthy boundaries. Number 1, telling all. And that is one that I know that I struggle with, because especially in these videos, I've been trying to be transparent, but at the same time, I need to practice transparency with mindfulness and understand, like, I do have a perspective and other people have other perspective, but being able to tell all. So number 1 is telling all. Number 2, talking at an intimate level on the first meeting. Like, that's unhealthy boundaries. If you meet somebody and you automatically talking about having sex or getting into this and that, that's kind of crossing that threshold of unhealthy. Number 3, falling in love with a new acquaintance. That's critical, because a lot of times my counselor was telling me this. She was like, hey, you need to heal. There's some time that needs to elapse between what you're doing in your what you did in your previous relationship and what you're going to do in your next one. And that middle time is for you. So that is critical. Number 4, falling in love with anyone who reaches out. Like, when you're wounded and someone reaches out to you, you may fall in love with them or whatever. So, but you got to be mindful, like, hey, your boundaries will help you establish that. Number 5, being overwhelmed by a person's or being preoccupied, like being consumed with other people, like just all preoccupy yourself with them and what they think or what they may be doing. Sometimes that can be a sign of an unhealthy boundary. Acting on a first sexual impulse. And if you didn't go back and understand the last video that I did, it may be offensive to some, but understand pause and lust, then definitely go back, and I may do another one in upcoming year on that topic right there. So acting out on first sexual impulse is 6. Number 7, going against your personal values or rights to please others. Being a people pleaser. I'm telling you, like, there's a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, and it talks about people pleasers. Like, you realize that people that go out their way to try to please other people will do it at the expense of their own joy and their own mental health. So you got to be able to, I'm not saying don't do anything for other people, but don't go against your personal values or your rights to please other people. So bring it back in. You got to start, like, Like 2020, it ended with a zero. There's a lot of things that zeroed out in your life. There's a lot of things that you thought were solid that crumbled. Rome wasn't built in a day, but it was tore down pretty fast, if not a day. But what I'm saying is this: is like 2020 tore down some walls, on you. Some things that you thought was solid, some things, whether it be you were standing on your job and you thought it was going to be secure, you were standing on your education and you thought you were smarter than everybody, and you were standing on a relationship that you thought was going to be lasting forever. You were standing on your health, and maybe you got sick or you had that COVID and you realized that you're fragile and frail. You were standing on a lot of things, and 2020 showed you, it kind of shook the foundation, and now you got to go through the rubble and realize that. So it was zeroed out a lot of things. We're about to enter into 2021, and that one there, going from the zero to the one, what I want you to take away from this is put yourself first. Like this year, this upcoming year, if you do resolutions or whatever, and we're going to get into this maybe a little later, but that number one is that you're number one. So when you wake up, tell yourself you're important. Put yourself first. Do something for you this year. And it's not in a selfish perspective, because like it says in the airplane, when the airplane's flying and in case of emergency, a mask is going to fall from the ceiling, make sure you secure your mask first before you try to help someone else. So that's what I'm asking you to do this year. It's like put your mask on first and secure that, and before you go try to help someone else. So that one, put yourself first. Number 8, not noticing when someone else displays inappropriate boundaries. Like it's an unhealthy boundary for you to not recognize when other people have unhealthy boundaries. And on this one here, it's critical, because just because you set boundaries doesn't mean other people won't set boundaries of how they're going to deal with you. And there's been wars over boundaries. Like Israel is a good example, the New Jerusalem versus the Old Jerusalem. There have been many wars over there because they can't decide when that line to each one divide. And even in the States, that's how we got the South Carolina versus North Carolina. And that's how we have the South Dakota versus North Dakota, because individuals or individual properties or cities or sovereignty, they broke apart because they couldn't decide where they couldn't agree. And that's critical right there, because two people could not occupy the same spot unless they agree. Meaning, like, if there's disagreements there's going to be turbulence. There's going to be a lot of pain, disappointment, and it's going to get to wars and stuff of that nature. So the only way you're able to occupy the same space of someone is if you agree. So when you establish your boundaries, you got to be understanding that people may have boundaries that may be on one side or the other side of yours, and you're going to have to be okay with the destruction of some relationships that you thought were more solid. So number 9, not noticing when someone invades your boundaries. That's kind of on that. You got to, and this is how you can check if you don't notice if somebody invades your boundaries. Like, have you ever been in a situation, I'm just thinking of this, like, I don't do a premeditated where I know what I'm going to say. As I go through these videos, just kind of go. So this is how you're going to know if number 9, not noticing when someone invades one of your boundaries. Have you ever been in a situation where someone said something to you and it kind of caught you off guard, but you didn't know it kind of caught you stumbled off guard so much that you're like, man, okay. And you just kind of laughed it off and whatever. And then as you went about your way, you started reflecting like, man, that was very disrespectful. Like, how they talked to me, how they said that to me, that wasn't appropriate. Like, when it happened, you just kind of laughed it off. Like, you weren't even aware that they crossed that line until you reflected on it after you got away from them. And this is what you'll do. You're like, man, next time they say something to me like that, I'm going to be aware of that. So that's how you're going to know that you have an unhealthy boundary. When people ever cross that line and you not enforce a boundary and you just kind of laugh it off and like, oh, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. So you got to be aware. Number 9 is not noticing when someone invades your boundaries. Number 10, accepting food, gifts, touch, sex that you don't want. Like, if you don't want it, you don't want it. Don't just be appeasing people to appease people. Like, be able to say no. And that's one of the things that boundaries establish. Like, you have to have the ability to say no. And sometimes you have to say no to yourself. Number 11, touching without asking. Like, if you shouldn't be touching, especially if you're not in a touchy type relationship things, you shouldn't be doing that. Number 12, taking as much as you can get for the sake of getting. Like, if you one of these people that are leeches, that's an unhealthy boundary. Like, taking as much as you can. I used to have a rule when I was in Afghanistan. I said to the soldiers, because I had people sending me all kind of goodies and stuff over there, and I put it out to share with everyone. And I says, if you give more than you take, the world will be a better place. But if you take more than you give, then you're selfish. So if you're taking more than you're giving, then you're in a selfish relationship. But if you give more than you take, then the world's going to be better. But then the next one is kind of the other side of that. Number 13, giving as much as you can give for the sake of giving. Like, I'm a giver, and sometimes I give to my detriment. Sometimes I've given out of my last, and I realized that put me into what we call hidden contracts. I'll do something for someone, and it'll be my last, and I won't say I want anything back in return, but in the back of my mind, I know I gave them my last. So when they do something that's contrary to what I think is appropriate, sometimes I feel abused, but they didn't ask me to give it. So that is definitely an unhealthy boundary. Number 14, allowing someone to take as much as they can from you. Like, people can only take from you what you allow them to take. So it's unhealthy for you to have people take from you as much as they can. Number 15, letting others direct your life. Like I've said before, this is your life. Live it. I mean, a lot of times people, whether it be parents, whether it be friends, whether it be teachers, they tell you what they think you should be doing. The reality of it is your life to live, and you decide what you're going to do with it, and be okay with other people not being okay with it. Number 16, let others describe your reality. Like, let people tell you how you should feel or what you should be doing. Don't let them describe your reality. You create your own reality, and then if it's something that your reality is something that you don't currently like, as I told you before, the best place to start is right where you are, and to make sure that you can grow and go forward. Number 17, let others define you. A lot of people will try to define me through my mistakes, but I'm greater than every mistake I'd have never made. And sometimes I say I can't fail, because even in failing, I have successfully found out something that didn't work. So even in my failures, I'm success. So I can begin again more intelligently, so I can make sure that I don't do it again in the future. Number 18, believing others can anticipate your needs. People are not mind readers, and your boundaries should be established around communication. You should be able to tell people like what you need when you need help. Like, I don't know how to ask for help. I'm thinking like, hey, if you see me struggling, you're supposed to be able to just know and recognize and offer it. But that's kind of an unhealthy boundary. Like, people can't anticipate your needs. You're going to have to learn how to communicate. Then number 19, expecting others to fulfill your needs automatically. Like, they can't anticipate it. And sometimes, like I said in previous videos, like, the best thing God has done for me is allow people to fail me. Like, because when you need people the most, they'll be there for you the least. But if you take your uncertain terms to a certain God, then you got it made, because God can make everything work out to your good for them that love Him and are called according to His purpose. Number 20, falling apart so someone will take care of you. Your best advocate for your mental health is you. It's on you to take care of you. Don't expect anybody else to take care of you. Don't expect anybody to pat you on the back. If you ain't patting yourself on the back, if you ain't telling yourself how proud of you are, if you ain't telling yourself you can go and you can do this, don't have that expectation that somebody else going to do for you. Like, do for you like you want other people to do for you. Put yourself first this year. Self-abuse. 21 is self-abuse. Like, take care of yourself. You got to drink more water, and this is one of the things I'm going to be doing, drinking more water, exercise regularly, taking those mental breaks, meditate, and I'm going to incorporate some of that into this year. Self-abuse is a sign of an unhealthy boundary. 22, sexual and physical abuse. So if someone is sexually abuses, whether it be through manipulation, go back and watch the pause and lust, but whatever it is, that is a sign of an unhealthy boundary. But the last 23 is food abuse. Food abuse, meaning like overeating is unhealthy. Like, I know this is a glutton type season where you go from Thanksgiving to Christmas and people are overeating and under exercising and stuff of that nature, that is an unhealthy boundary. So learn to manage. Dr. Sebi used to say, and I'm not, well versed in everything that he did or his natural things, but there was a sign in there that says, don't live to eat, eat to live. I mean, like, some of the stuff that's the most beneficial to you, or some of the stuff that you probably your taste bud hasn't been directed towards. So make sure that you go through that. We're coming up on 30 minutes. I might even do another video today on this New Year's Eve edition, but I definitely wanted to go through the signs of the unhealthy boundaries. So what I will do, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go get showered and shaved and kind of washed up from the run. I've been roughing it lately, so I'm showing signs of my age with the gray in my beard. But go back, and I know I went through those pretty fast, but I wasn't talking fast. You were listening slow, so you may have to go watch it 2 or 3 times so you can get it. But anyways, I'll be back on in a little bit. Got some errands to run because I want to close this year out strong. And 2021, we're gonna put ourselves first. With that being said, I'm gonna start the next video with my new topic. I'm gonna bring in the new year on New Year's Eve. Let me think about that as I shower. But the next topic is gonna be me. Like, we have had World War I, we have had World War II, and now our next topic is gonna be World War Me. I'm really going to war with myself this year to really be better. So we're gonna do a World War Me. And really define some things. So I might not introduce it on the next topic. If I come back on today, I might wait until the New Year's. But when you go into war with yourself, you gotta realize who your enemies are. But more importantly, you gotta realize who your allies are. Because just because they were allies on a previous, and you probably learned in 2020, people who you thought were allies turn out to be enemies. Because sometimes people will be allies just so they can get information from you, so they can make a better equipped enemy to try to destroy you later. But we'll get into that. We're really going to build, in spite of people not wanting us to grow and they want us to be defined by our past. I tell you what, there is going to be a past, and we're going to move past those mistakes. We're going to move past those shortcomings, and we're going to grow and be more intentional and purposeful and be better. And a better version of you is definitely something to strive for. So take heart, be well, young kings. Faith really operates, triumphs, faith, operates and triumphs in when you go through those various different tribulations. Know that you will come out with perseverance. And then once you get to that perseverance, you're going to get to the proven character. And then once you get to that proven character, hope. And if you got hope, I mean, it does not disappoint. So be well, young kings.